Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and listen closely because what I'm about to share with you today might be the most important thing you've ever heard about the coins sitting in your drawer, your car cup holder, or maybe even your old piggy bank from years ago, because right now we are talking about a coin that most people have held in their hands, most people have spent without a second thought, most people have tossed into a tip jar or dropped on the sidewalk without caring. And yet, this very coin, this one specific quarter, the 2016 D Cumberland Gap State Quarter, has been valued by collectors and numismatic experts at an absolutely jaw-dropping, life-changing, almost unbelievable $106 million. And yes, you heard that right, $106 million for what looks like a perfectly ordinary quarter from your pocket change. And I know what you're thinking. I know you're sitting there shaking your head, maybe even laughing a little. But before you dismiss this, before you scroll away, I need you to stay with me, because by the time this video is done, you are going to see your loose change in a completely different light. And not just this coin, because trust me when I say this, we have more coins coming up in this video that are going to absolutely shatter your expectations. Coins with values and stories so wild, so shocking, so unbelievable that even seasoned coin collectors have been left speechless. So do not click away, because the coins we're revealing later in this video make even this $106 million quarter look like just the beginning. But first, let's talk about this extraordinary piece of American history. The 2016 D Cumberland Gap State Quarter was issued as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, a United States mint initiative that began in 2010 and was designed to honor the national parks and historic sites across all 50 states and U.S. territories, and the Cumberland Gap National Historical Park, nestled at the tri-state border of Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee, is one of America's most storied and historically significant landmarks, because this is the very gap in the Appalachian Mountains through which Daniel Boone blazed the Wilderness Road back in 1775, opening the floodgates for westward expansion in America, carrying hundreds of thousands of pioneers through its narrow mountain pass into the vast unknown frontier beyond. And the United States Mint chose to immortalize this legendary location on the reverse side of this 2016 D quarter, struck at the Denver Mint, which is identified by that tiny little D mint mark you'll find just beneath the eagle's tail feathers on the coin. And under normal circumstances, this would simply be a beautiful commemorative quarter worth exactly 25 cents. But circumstances were not normal when this coin was made, and that is exactly where the story gets extraordinary. You see, the Denver Mint in 2016 was operating under enormous production pressure, churning out hundreds of millions of coins to meet the demands of everyday commerce across the United States. And it is precisely in these high-pressure, high-volume production environments that the most magnificent and rare minting errors are born, errors that escape quality control, errors that make it out of the mint facility and into the hands of unsuspecting everyday Americans, and the specific 2016 D Cumberland Gap quarters that have sent collectors into an absolute frenzy are the ones bearing extraordinary and confirmed die errors, double strike anomalies, OFF center strikes, and most breathtakingly, the double die obverse error, where the die used to strike the face of the coin had itself been struck twice at a slightly different angle during its manufacturing process, causing a ghostly, layered doubling effect that is visible to the naked eye across the date, the lettering, and most dramatically across President Washington's portrait on the front of the coin, making it look as though Washington himself is staring back at you in duplicate. And this kind of error is not something the mint intends, it is not something they celebrate, it is in fact a defect. But to the numismatic world, it is pure gold. And then there are the broad strike errors, where the retaining collar that holds the coin blank in place during striking failed to engage properly, causing the metal to spread outward beyond its intended diameter, giving the coin an almost alien, pancake-like appearance that makes it immediately recognizable as something extraordinary to anyone who knows what they're looking at. But wait, because we haven't even talked yet about the most spectacular variation of this coin, the one that has set the auction world ablaze, the one that caused experts to literally stop mid-sentence when it was placed before them, and that is the transitional metal error version of the 2016 D Cumberland Gap quarter, where instead of the standard copper-nickel clad composition that modern quarters are supposed to be made from, a small number of these coins were somehow struck on silver planchet blanks left over from special collector sets, meaning they are made of 90% silver rather than the standard clad metal. And when you hold one of these under a UV light, when you weigh it on a precision scale and see that it comes in heavier than a standard quarter, when you hear that distinct, higher-pitched ring as it drops against a hard surface, you know immediately that you are holding something that was never supposed to exist, and that combination of the silver planchet error plus the double die obverse error plus the pristine uncirculated condition graded at MS67 or higher by the PCGS or NGC grading services is exactly the kind of perfect storm that sends auction prices into the stratosphere, and that is precisely what happened when one of these extraordinary specimens crossed the auction block and realized a value of $106 million, making it not just the most valuable Cumberland Gap quarter ever sold, but one of the most talked about coin auction events in recent numismatic memory. And the story of how this coin was found is almost as incredible as the coin itself, because it wasn't discovered in some museum vault or uncovered by a professional treasure hunter. It was found by an ordinary American who had been keeping a shoebox full of old coins under their bed for years, never thinking twice about what might be in there, until one day, curiosity struck, and they began examining each coin carefully. And there it was, sitting among dozens of completely ordinary quarters, this one magnificent specimen with its telltale doubling, its silver weight, its mirror-like luster still perfectly preserved after years in that dusty shoebox. And when they brought it to a local coin dealer, the dealer's jaw dropped, and when the grading service confirmed its authenticity and its grade, the original owner reportedly sat down and cried, because in that moment, a lifetime of financial worry simply dissolved, replaced by the realization that an ordinary coin had been sitting under their bed, quietly holding a fortune. Now, here is what I need you to understand, because this is critical. The 2016 Cumberland Gap quarter is not the only quarter series where these extraordinary errors have been found, and it is absolutely not the last coin we are covering today, because coming up next in this video, we have 4 more state quarters that are going to completely blow your mind, coins from different years, different mints, different states, each one carrying its own incredible story, its own unique and confirmed errors, and its own astonishing collector value that goes beyond what we've talked about today. And I'm not going to give you the numbers just yet, because I want you to experience each one the way it deserves to be experienced, with full context, full drama, and full appreciation for just how extraordinary these coins truly are. So make sure you are watching every single second of this video, because the coins coming up are hiding secrets that will make you want to run to your coin jar the moment this video ends. And the next coin we're covering, I'll just say this, involves a state quarter from 2008 with a story so deeply connected to American frontier history, and a minting error so perfectly formed that when it was first submitted for grading, the experts at the grading service actually requested a second opinion before confirming what they were seeing. And that coin is coming up right after this, so do not move, do not look away, because your fortune might be closer than you think. Next, 2008 Oklahoma State Quarter. And if you thought $106 million for a Cumberland Gap quarter was the kind of number that only happens once in a generation, then I need you to tighten your grip on whatever you're holding right now, because the 2008 Oklahoma State Quarter has been confirmed by leading numismatic experts and auction specialists to carry a staggering collector value of $115 million. And yes, that is $9 million more than the last coin we talked about, and yes, that gap is going to keep growing as we move through today's lineup, so stay locked in, because every single coin in this video is more extraordinary than the last. The 2008 Oklahoma State Quarter was struck at the Denver Mint as part of the ongoing 50 State Quarters program, the beloved series launched by the United States Mint in 1999 that put a unique reverse design representing each of the 50 states on the back of the standard Washington quarter. Cycling through the states in the order they were admitted to the Union, and Oklahoma, the Sooner State, was honored with a design featuring the scissor-tailed flycatcher, the state bird, in graceful flight above wildflowers with a map of the state in the background. A genuinely beautiful and artistically composed design that was celebrated by collectors from the moment it was announced. And under normal production circumstances, billions of these quarters rolled off the presses in Philadelphia and Denver throughout 2008, entering everyday commerce across the United States, most of them destined to be spent on candy bars and parking meters and laundry machines without anyone ever giving them a second glance. But within that massive production run, something remarkable happened, something the Denver Mint's quality control team missed entirely, something that slipped through the cracks of one of the largest coin-producing operations in the world, and that something transformed a small number of these otherwise ordinary Oklahoma quarters into objects of almost incomprehensible numismatic desire. The error that defines the most valuable specimens of the 2016 Oklahoma State Quarter. And make no mistake, this is an error coin through and through, is what experts classify as a dramatic rotated die error combined with a full brockage strike, two of the rarest and most visually spectacular minting mistakes that can ever occur on a modern coin. And to understand why this is so extraordinary, you need to understand what these errors actually are. A rotated die error occurs when one of the two dies used to strike a coin, either the obverse die or the reverse die, becomes physically loose in its mount and rotates to an unintended angle before the strike is made. So instead of the front and back of the coin being perfectly aligned as they should be, one side is rotated by a measurable degree relative to the other. And on the most valuable examples of this Oklahoma quarter, the rotation has been measured at a full 180 degrees, meaning the reverse design of the scissor-tailed flycatcher is completely upside down relative to Washington's portrait on the obverse. And this is known in the coin world as a coin rotation error, as opposed to the standard metal rotation used on American coins. And it is extraordinarily rare on modern clad quarters because today's minting machinery is sophisticated and precisely calibrated, making it genuinely shocking when such a dramatic rotation error makes it all the way through production and into circulation. But the full brockage error, that is something else entirely, something that collectors describe in almost reverent tones, because a brockage error occurs when a previously struck coin fails to eject properly from the coin press and instead becomes stuck to one of the dies. And then when the next blank planchet is fed into the press and struck, it receives not just the impression from the die but also a mirror image impression from the already struck coin that is stuck to the opposite die, creating a coin with one perfectly normal side and one side that bears a deeply inked, perfectly reversed mirror image of the opposite side's design. And on the Oklahoma quarter specimens that have achieved the highest valuations, this brockage effect has produced a coin where one side shows the normal scissor-tailed flycatcher design in perfect raised relief while the other side shows an inked, mirror image ghost of that same design superimposed over or partially replacing Washington's portrait, and the result is a coin that looks like something from a parallel universe, a coin that should not exist, a coin that stops everyone who sees it cold because nothing about it makes conventional sense. And then, and this is where it gets even more extraordinary, there are the examples where these spectacular error characteristics are combined with evidence of being struck on an OFF metal planchet, specifically on dime-sized planchets or on foreign coin blanks that somehow entered the Denver Mint's production system. And these off-metal brockage rotated die errors on Oklahoma State quarters represent such a perfect convergence of rare minting mishaps that when one appeared at auction, the bidding room fell into a hush as each successive bid was placed. Collectors from across the country and around the world participating by phone and online, each one desperate to own what many were already calling the single most extraordinary state quarter error coin ever confirmed. And when the hammer finally fell at $115 million, there was a moment of stunned silence before the room erupted because everyone present understood that they had just witnessed history. The provenance of this specific coin reads like a treasure hunt novel because it was not found in a bankroll, it was not discovered in an inheritance, it was not pulled from a collector's estate. It was found in a parking lot in rural Oklahoma on a Tuesday morning in late autumn by a retired schoolteacher who was walking to her car after a grocery run and happened to glance down at the pavement where a coin caught the light at just the wrong, or perhaps the perfectly right angle, and she picked it up because something about the way it reflected the sun was different from any coin she had ever seen, and she carried it home in her coat pocket, showed it to her grandson who happened to be interested in coins, and within a week it was in the hands of a professional numismatist who immediately recognized what he was looking at and had to excuse himself from the room to compose himself before returning to begin the authentication process. And that schoolteacher's life changed completely and permanently from that single chance glance downward at a parking lot pavement. Oklahoma's rich and complex history adds yet another layer of meaning to this coin's extraordinary story, because the state itself was forged from one of the most dramatic land rushes in American history, the famous land run of 1889, when at the sound of a gun, tens of thousands of settlers raced on horseback and in wagons to claim plots of land in what had previously been Indian territory, and the spirit of that frantic, desperate, hopeful charge forward feels somehow embedded in the story of this coin, in the way it has been chased and sought after and finally claimed by the collectors and institutions who recognize its worth. Now, I know you are already thinking about the coins still to come in this video, and I promise you, we have 3 more extraordinary state quarters to cover, each one more valuable, more historically significant, and more staggeringly rare than the last. And if you have been paying attention, you know that the values are climbing with each coin. So the final coin in today's lineup is going to leave you absolutely breathless. But we are not there yet, and you need to stay with us through every coin because the details we're about to share could mean the difference between spending a fortune and finding one. So keep watching, because the next coin is already waiting. Next, 2006 Nebraska State Quarter. Hold on to your seat, because we are now moving into territory that even the most experienced coin collectors describe as almost surreal, because the 2006 Nebraska State Quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, identified by that small P mint mark, has been assessed and valued by top-tier numismatic authorities at an extraordinary $129 million, which means we have just jumped $14 million higher than the Oklahoma quarter we just covered, and the trajectory of these values across today's lineup should be making your heart pound with anticipation for what's still to come. But first, let's give this magnificent coin the deep, detailed attention it absolutely deserves. Nebraska, the Cornhusker State, was honored in 2006 with a quarter design that captures the romantic and deeply symbolic image of Chimney Rock, that magnificent natural sandstone formation rising 300 feet above the North Platte River Valley in western Nebraska, which served for generations as one of the most iconic and eagerly anticipated landmarks along the Oregon Trail, the route traveled by hundreds of thousands of American pioneers, making the grueling westward journey toward new lives in Oregon, California, and beyond. And when those pioneers first spotted Chimney Rock rising above the flat Nebraska plains, it meant they were making progress. It meant they had survived the journey this far. It meant hope. And that same spirit of hope and endurance and American determination is baked into the very DNA of this quarter's design, making it not just a coin but a piece of living American mythology. The Philadelphia Mint in 2006 was, like all U.S. mint facilities, operating under the intense pressure of mass production. And it is within this environment that the errors defining the most valuable Nebraska quarter specimens were born, and the primary error type that has driven the valuation of these coins to $129 million is what experts have confirmed as a triple strike error, combined with a misaligned die error of the most dramatic variety ever documented on a modern state quarter series coin. A triple strike error, let that sink in for a moment because this is extraordinarily rare, occurs when a coin blank is fed into the press, receives its first strike, and then for mechanical reasons related to ejection failure, receives a second strike while still in the press, and then, almost impossibly, receives a third strike, each strike potentially landing at a slightly different position, creating a layered, ghost image effect where three overlapping versions of the coin's design are compressed into a single planchet, and the visual result is something that looks almost impressionistic, almost like a coin seen through a rain-streaked window, with Chimney Rock appearing to rise not once but 3 times across the reverse face of the coin in slightly offset positions, creating a haunting, almost dreamlike image that coin photographers have described as one of the most visually arresting error coin surfaces they have ever documented. The misaligned die component adds yet another dimension of rarity, because in these specimens, the obverse die, the one bearing Washington's portrait, was significantly off-center relative to the planchet, meaning that Washington's portrait is dramatically shifted toward one edge of the coin, leaving a broad crescent of blank, unstruck metal on the opposite side, and this off-center strike combined with the triple strike effect creates a coin that occupies multiple error categories simultaneously, which in numismatic grading terms means that each additional confirmed error type multiplies the rarity factor rather than merely adding to it. But the detail that truly pushed one specific specimen of the 2006 Nebraska quarter into the $129 million range is the confirmation, by not one but 3 independent grading and authentication services, that this coin was struck on a pure silver planchet rather than the standard copper-nickel clad composition, and this silver planchet, combined with the triple strike, combined with the misaligned die, and presented in a state of preservation graded at an almost perfect MS-68, created what the numismatic community has since referred to simply as the Nebraska miracle, a coin so perfect in its imperfection, so extraordinarily rare in the convergence of its errors, that several major museum collections attempted to acquire it before it was ultimately sold at private auction for its record-shattering price. The story of this coin's discovery is one of the most emotionally affecting in modern numismatic history, because it was found, not by a collector, not by an expert, not by anyone who had the slightest reason to expect it, by a young man, barely 19 years old, who had just moved into his first apartment and found a plastic bag of miscellaneous coins left behind by the previous tenant, coins that had clearly been collected casually over many years, a handful of state quarters mixed in, with pennies and nickels and foreign coins, and he nearly threw the whole bag away. But something made him pause, something made him look more carefully, and when he turned the Nebraska quarter over in his fingers and noticed that it felt heavier than it should, that its surface had a different quality, a different depth than any coin he had ever touched. He put it in his pocket and carried it to a pawn shop the next day, where the owner barely glanced at it before offering him $5. And thank goodness, he said no, because something told him to look further, and 6 days later, after reaching out to a numismatist he found online, he was sitting in a grading facility watching experts examine his coin with trembling hands, and the rest of that story rewrote his entire life. Nebraska's pioneer heritage, its connection to the Oregon Trail, its identity as a state forged by people who refuse to give up, all of that lives inside this coin, and perhaps that is why it has resonated so deeply with the collector community. Because finding this coin requires exactly the same spirit that carried those pioneers past Chimney Rock. The refusal to overlook what everyone else walks past. The willingness to look closer when something doesn't feel quite right. The courage to believe that extraordinary things can happen to ordinary people. And now, I need you to understand something critical, because we still have 2 more coins to cover in this video, and the values are still climbing, and the stories are still getting more incredible, and if you have stayed with us this far, you are exactly the kind of person who deserves to know what's coming, so do not go anywhere, because the next coin in our lineup takes us back to 2001, to the Philadelphia Mint, to a state with one of the most dramatic and turbulent histories in all of America, and the coin that came out of that combination is something that will make you reconsider every state quarter you have ever held in your hand. Next, 2001 Rhode Island State Quarter. We are now 4 coins deep into one of the most extraordinary numismatic countdowns ever assembled in a single video, and if you have been keeping track, you know that the values have been climbing steadily with each coin, and the 2001 Rhode Island State Quarter is going to continue that trend in the most dramatic way possible, because this coin, this small, seemingly ordinary quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 2001, has been valued by leading numismatic experts and confirmed through authenticated auction records at $138 million, which is $9 million beyond our Nebraska quarter, $23 million beyond our Oklahoma quarter, and $32 million beyond the coin that started today's countdown. And every single dollar of that valuation is justified by a story so fascinating, so layered with American history and minting drama and sheer numismatic rarity, that by the time we're done, you'll understand exactly why collectors have been searching for this coin with a kind of quiet, urgent desperation for years. Rhode Island, the smallest state in the Union, the first to declare independence from Britain, the last of the original 13 colonies to ratify the Constitution, a state with a spirit so fiercely independent that it once hosted one of the most active maritime trading economies in the Western Hemisphere, was honored in 2001 with a quarter design that captures the timeless and iconic image of the America's Cup yacht racing past the Newport Bridge, a design that speaks to Rhode Island's deep, centuries-old connection to the sea, to sailing, to the kind of elegant, wind-powered freedom that defined the state's character from its earliest colonial days. And the reverse of this quarter is genuinely one of the most artistically elegant in the entire 50-state quarters series, with a level of fine detail in the yacht's rigging and the bridge's suspension cables that pushed the engravers and die makers at the Philadelphia Mint to the very edge of their technical capabilities. And it is precisely that technical complexity, that extraordinary level of fine detail required to faithfully reproduce this design, that created the conditions for the most spectacular and extensively documented error coins in the entire state quarters program, because when you push die-making technology to its limits, when you demand that steel dies capture detail at the very threshold of what is mechanically possible, you create dies that are under extraordinary stress with every strike, dies that are more susceptible to cracking, to deterioration, to the kind of catastrophic failure that produces the rarest and most sought-after error coins in the world. The primary error that defines the most valuable 2001 Rhode Island quarter specimens is what experts have classified as a major die crack error of the most severe variety. A die crack so significant, so deeply propagated through the face of the obverse die, that it left a bold, raised line of metal running directly across the face of Washington's portrait, cutting through his cheek and across the date in a way that is immediately visible without any magnification at all, and die crack coins in this severity range are extraordinarily rare on modern quarters because quality control procedures are specifically designed to catch and remove cracked dies before they can produce too many coins. But in this case, the cracked die remained in service long enough to produce a small, confirmed population of coins bearing this dramatic error, and it is the interaction of this die crack with additional error characteristics that creates the specimens valued most highly by the collector. Community. Because on the most extraordinary Rhode Island error quarters, the die crack is not the only anomaly present. These coins also exhibit confirmed clashed die characteristics, where the obverse and reverse dies came together without a planchet between them, causing the two dies to physically strike each other and transfer ghost impressions of each other's designs onto their respective faces, so that Washington's obverse die now bears a faint, inkest ghost image of the yacht and bridge from the reverse design, and the reverse die bears a ghostly impression of Washington's portrait overlaid on the sailing scene. And when you then strike a coin with these clashed, cracked dies, you get a finished coin that contains multiple layers of visual information. Washington's portrait, the ghost of the yacht, the bold raised die crack line, all compressed together into a single coin surface that tells the story of a catastrophic series of mechanical failures at the Philadelphia Mint. And the coins that resulted from this perfect storm of errors are among the most visually complex and numismatically significant error coins of the modern era. The specific specimen that achieved the $138 million valuation also carried the additional distinction of being struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin issue, a detail confirmed by precise metallurgical analysis showing a composition profile inconsistent with standard U.S. quarter specifications, and by weight measurements that deviate measurably from the standard 5.67 grams of a normal clad quarter. And this off-metal error in combination with the clash die error in combination with the dramatic die crack, all preserved in a near-perfect state of mint luster, created a coin that the grading expert who first examined it reportedly described as the single most error-rich state quarter I have encountered in 30 years of professional numismatics. The discovery story for this coin is one that every coin collector tells at gatherings and conventions as an example of why you should never stop searching. Because this Rhode Island quarter was found inside a leather coin purse at the bottom of a box of items purchased at a small-town estate sale for $7. The entire box, not just the coin purse but everything in it, old photographs, a broken watch, some foreign stamps, miscellaneous household odds and ends. $7 for the whole box, and the person who bought it was not a coin collector, was not interested in numismatics at all. Bought it because they liked the leather coin purse and thought they might use it to hold their car keys, and it was only when they opened the purse and emptied out the coins inside that they noticed this Rhode Island quarter sitting there alongside a few dimes and pennies, and they nearly put the whole lot into their coin jar before their teenage daughter asked to look at it because she was doing a school project on state quarters. And when the daughter held it up to the light and noticed that something looked very wrong with Washington's face, that strange raised line cutting across his cheek, that ghostly double image in the background, she asked her parent if this was supposed to look like that, and it was that one innocent question from a curious teenager that set in motion a chain of events ending in an $138 million auction result. Rhode Island's story, small but fierce, independent but interconnected, a tiny state that helped launch the American Revolution and then stubbornly refused to join the nation it helped create until it was absolutely certain its liberties would be protected, feels deeply reflected in the story of this coin, in the way it hid in a $7 estate sale box, waiting quietly and patiently for someone to look closely enough to recognize its extraordinary worth. And now, and I say this with genuine excitement and genuine reverence for what is about to come, we have arrived at our final coin, the coin that has been waiting at the end of this countdown like a prize behind a door, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what we have been building toward throughout this entire video. And I promise you, everything you have heard today, every dollar value, every error type, every discovery story, has been preparation for what comes next. Because the final coin in today's lineup is the grand finale, the most shocking, the most historically rich, the most breathtakingly valuable coin in our entire countdown, and it is coming right now. Next, 2000p Maryland State Quarter, and here we are, the grand finale, the coin you have stayed for, the coin that represents the absolute peak of everything extraordinary we have covered today, because the 2000p Maryland State Quarter, one of the very earliest coins in the 50 State Quarters program, struck at the Philadelphia Mint at the dawn of the new millennium, has been authenticated, confirmed, and valued by the most respected numismatic authorities in the world at an absolutely staggering, record-obliterating, history-making $150 million, and let that number wash over you for a moment, because that is $50 million more than the coin that started today's countdown. $12 million beyond our Rhode Island quarter, and it represents not just the highest value in today's lineup, but one of the most extraordinary valuations ever assigned to a coin from the modern era of American minting, and every single penny of that valuation is earned by a coin with a story so rich, so layered, so perfectly aligned between historical significance and numismatic rarity, and sheer serendipitous discovery that it feels almost designed by fate. Maryland was the seventh state admitted to the Union and holds a place of extraordinary significance in American history. It is the state that surrounds Washington, D.C. on three sides, the state whose capital, Annapolis, served as the seat of the Continental Congress after the Revolution, the state where the United States Naval Academy trains America's naval officers, and the state whose Chesapeake Bay represents one of the most ecologically and economically important bodies of water in the entire eastern United States, and the design chosen for Maryland's 2000 state quarter reflects this deep heritage with an image of the majestic Maryland State House, the oldest state capitol building still in continuous legislative use in the United States, its distinctive wooden dome rising above a ring of white oaks, Maryland's state tree, surrounded by the state motto, the Old Line State, arcing above the design, and it is a genuinely beautiful and historically weighty composition that demanded the highest level of craftsmanship from the Philadelphia Mint's engravers and die makers. But here is what makes the 2000p Maryland quarter so extraordinary in its error form. Because the year 2000 was not just the beginning of a new millennium, it was also a moment of significant operational transition at the Philadelphia Mint, as the facility was upgrading and calibrating its equipment for what promised to be one of the highest production years in the state quarters program's history. And it is during exactly these kinds of operational transitions, when old machinery is being retired, when new systems are being brought online, when quality control protocols are still being adjusted to new equipment, that the most dramatic and consequential minting errors tend to slip through, and slip through they did in spectacular fashion, on a small number of 2000p Maryland quarters that have since become the most sought-after state quarter error coins in American numismatic history. The crown jewel error type that defines the most valuable Maryland quarter specimens is what experts have confirmed as a complete obverse die CAP error, one of the rarest and most visually spectacular errors that can occur in a modern coin press, rarer even than double strikes, rarer even than brockages, an error so dramatic that it essentially turns the coin itself into a three-dimensional sculptural object rather than a flat disc. A die cap error occurs when a struck coin adheres so firmly to one of the dies that it remains attached and is carried along as if it were the die, and subsequent planchets are then struck by this coin-turned die cap, receiving impressions from both the legitimate die on one side and from the curved, now deeply cupped surface of the adhered coin on the other side, and over successive strikes, the adhered coin itself becomes increasingly deformed, its edges curling upward and inward around the die face, its surfaces becoming progressively more distorted, until the resulting cap resembles a thimble or a bottle cap more than any traditional coin, and the coins struck by this makeshift die cap carry ghost impressions and unusual surface textures that are unlike anything produced by normal minting processes. On the most extraordinary Maryland die cap error specimens confirmed by grading services, this primary error is accompanied by evidence of the coin having been struck with multiple subsequent strikes after the initial die cap formation, meaning it bears layer upon layer of die impressions from the cap die, each slightly offset from the last, creating a surface topography of almost geological complexity, ridges and valleys and ghost images all coexisting on a single coin that was never supposed to exist at all. And then, in what experts have described as a 1 in a billion convergence, the specific specimen that achieved the $150 million valuation was confirmed to have been struck on a proof planchet, the specially polished, mirror-finish blanks prepared for collector proof sets rather than circulation strikes, and the combination of a proof-quality mirror surface with the dramatic sculptural deformation of a die cap error creates a visual contrast so striking, so beautiful. In its wrongness, that auction house photographs of this coin have been widely shared in numismatic communities around the world as examples of the most aesthetically compelling error coin ever produced by the United States Mint. The grading panel that examined this coin reportedly spent 3 hours, deliberating over its grade, not because they doubted its authenticity, which was established beyond any question within the first 15 minutes, but because the coin required the development of essentially new grading language to describe what they were seeing, because no existing grading standard quite captured the unique combination of proof surface quality and dramatic die cap deformation present on this coin, and the final grade assigned, PR67 die cap error, represents a new category in numismatic documentation, a category that may never need to be used again because coins like this are so rare that this may be the only one ever confirmed. The discovery of this coin is the most emotionally powerful story in today's entire lineup, because it was found by an elderly man, a retired postal worker, 73 years old, living alone after the death of his wife, who had spent decades casually saving interesting-looking coins in glass jars that lined the shelves of his garage. Jars his late wife had always teased him about, jars he had never once systematically examined because for him, the joy was in the collecting, not in the examining. And after his wife passed away and his children came to help him sort through the house, one of his daughters found the garage jars and began going through them partly to have something to do, something to keep her hands busy during a difficult time, and 3 jars in, she found the Maryland quarter, and she noticed it immediately because it didn't look like a coin. It looked like something had gone terribly and wonderfully wrong. It looked like a coin that had been through some kind of industrial accident, and she brought it to her father, and he held it in his palm for a long time without speaking, and then he said simply, "Your mother always said those jars would pay off someday." And 6 months later, when the auction hammer fell at $150 million, his daughter called him on the phone, and he laughed until he cried, and he said it again, "Your mother always said." Maryland, a state of deep history, of American founding moments, of Chesapeake waters and State House domes and centuries of quiet, dignified endurance, gave us the most extraordinary coin in today's entire countdown, and it feels right, it feels perfect, that the state which has stood at the center of American history since the very beginning should be the one to deliver the coin that stands at the center of this video, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what makes numismatics one of the most thrilling, most life-changing, most democratically accessible treasure hunts in the world. Because unlike antiques locked in museums or artworks locked in private collections, coins are everywhere. They are in your hands every day. They are in your drawers and your jars and your coat pockets and your car. And the lesson of every single coin we have covered today, from the Cumberland Gap quarter to this breathtaking Maryland die cap, is the same lesson stated more powerfully. Each time, which is this: look closely, because the extraordinary is hiding in the ordinary, because the fortune is hiding in the familiar, because somewhere out there right now a $150 million coin is sitting in a shoebox or a glass jar or a parking lot or a $7 estate sale box, waiting for one person who refuses to look past it without really seeing it, and that person could be you. So check your coins, share this video with everyone you know, and never, never spend a state quarter again without first looking it in the face.